Hi, this is Kamera again. We're on day number 259, Daniel chapter 4 through 6. I absolutely love Daniel. It shows God so much. Guys, when you read the Word of God, look for God in this message. See how God handles stuff, how He deals with things, what He says. And, just see His love. See Him for who He is, guys, as you read His Word. And the book of Daniel shows Him a lot, just like the other prophets. And so, again, we're in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar is ruling at this moment. King Nebuchadnezzar has a message he wants to share with everyone. And the message is about God. It's about what God has done for him. And so he's excited. He wants to share with everyone. He's sharing with every race, every nation, everybody, right? And so he is so excited. He says, prosperity and peace to you guys. That's how he greets them. I love how he greeted them. And so then he goes on again to talk about this great, wonderful God that shows off his miraculous wonders. And he's just so excited about what God did for him. And this is what happened. He had this disturbing dream. I mean, he was really, really disturbed about this dream. And he called all his wise men in the land. All his wise men, please come and interpret this dream. I mean, the fortune tellers, the sorcerers, the enchanters, all of them, the magicians, please come and listen to my dream and interpret it. So he gave them the scenario, right? And so of the dream. And once he was done, not one wise man could interpret that dream. Now Daniel comes along and goes up to the king. And Daniel basically tells the king he knows what his dream is. He told him what the dream was. He explains the dream. Just like he said, he dreamed of this tall tree. This tree was very healthy, very powerful, that stretched far and wide. The leaves stretched out far and wide. And then there was shelter for everyone. I mean, even the people and the animals basically submitted to under this tree, kept it warm and all this stuff. It was a very prosperous tree. It was strong. It was rooted very deep. And so there was a messenger from heaven who called out and said, cut down this tree. So then he cut down the tree, but do not disturb the root of this tree. And so Daniel interpreted for him. He said, well, you're that strong tree. You're that strong tree. And said that you are going to be cut off from your position as king. You're going to be cut off from your position as king, but your roots are going to stay there. You're going to be restored when you realize that it is God who reigns. He's the one who blessed you. He's the one who blessed who he wants to be blessed. There's more that's said, but you guys, make sure you read it, please. It is a very good story, very good. And so God blessed Daniel with the possessions he wanted to give him, and then he went on his way. I love the fact that Daniel said, after he gave the interpretation, he said, please take my advice, king, please. Daniel didn't like the dream either because he likes his king. But he says, please take my advice and stop sinning and let go of those things of the past, please. And so, the king rewarded him for interpreting the dream. 12 months later, he's on his roof and he's looking out at this vast, wealth that he has and how much he's over, how he's been blessed. But he says, look at all that I acquired with my own hands. While the words are still in his mouth, messenger from heaven, a voice from heaven calls out and tells him that it's all going to be taken away from him. His kingship is going to be taken from him, his position, and he's going to be removed from society, and he's going to be living like a wild animal, and he's going to be eating grass like a cow for 7 periods of time. Isn't that something? And so that's exactly what happened. And so while he was gone, he was living out in the wild with the wild animals. His nails grew super long, his hair grew super long, and he was out in the open, in the field. It says the dew drenched him, and it's like, okay, if the dew drenched him, I mean, he was living outside in the wild. And that was for 7 periods of time. I'm thinking 7 periods of time sound more like 7 years because the length of hair and nails they said he had, like animals, And he was out of his mind, basically, until he came to his senses. When God returned his sanity to him, he realized that it is God who blessed him with everything he had, because God blesses who he will with whatever he wants to bless them with. And that's what he recognized. And he gave praises to God, the one and only true God. And he was sharing that with everyone. That's what the whole message was. That's what God did for him. He showed him that he's truly God, that God is God. Best treasure, best gift you could ever receive on earth is knowing that God is the one true God. Knowing in your heart and your soul, and you can't keep it to yourself. You got to tell somebody, and that's what he did. Since he was the king over everyone, message went out to everyone. And so, yeah, that's what he was doing, giving praises to God. I absolutely love that. Years later, Belshazzar, he became king over Babylon. This dude right here had a feast of over 1,000 people and nobles and few people. And this dude, he want to get all fancy and nice. He calls for the gold cups that were in the temple. Remember the temple of God had Solomon created gold cups to be in the temple. Well, Nebuchadnezzar took a lot of those when he invaded Jerusalem. And he placed them in the temple. And he placed them in the temple, I believe. Yeah, I believe he had a temple. He put it in his. Belshazzar called for those gold items. And guess what he does? Not only do they drink out of those cups, but they started worshiping their idols while they were drinking those cups. We're bold, aren't we? We're bold. So guess what happens? This fingers from a hand goes and starts writing an inscription on the wall. A hand, can you believe it? Fingers of a hand started writing on the wall. And they see this. I'll be like, am I drunk? Right? Let's put this away. But anyway, they were very frightened. And no one could interpret that. So how about the Queen Mother? She overhears that they're looking for someone to interpret this. So she tells him about Daniel. He calls for Daniel. Daniel comes, and Daniel, the man of God Daniel, reminds Belshazzar of who God is. How Nebuchadnezzar, the king before you, what he went through, that testimony of how he lost everything and God gave him everything back. And you know this, and you had no fear, no respect for God to do what you did. That's basically what Daniel told him. And he said, but what's going to happen is, yeah, that's not going to turn out well for you. Not at all. And so after Daniel reminded him all of this, and he says, this is what he says. He said, you knew all of this, yet you did not humble yourself, and you defiled the Lord. You defiled the Lord and the Lord's articles, those gold cups. Isn't that something? And he says, the one who gives you breath of life, you didn't even honor him. And he even controls your destiny. That's true, guys. God controls, he's the one who gives us breath of life, and he does control our destiny. And you had no respect for him, and you defiled him. God sent this message. That's what he told him. The message was, mene, tekel, parson. And he says, mene means numbered. Your reign has been brought to an end, so your days have been numbered. He said, tekel, you've been weighed and found wanting. Isn't that something? You do not measure up. And parson, divided, the kingdom will now be divided between the Medes and the Persians. Isn't that something? So what he does is he go ahead and he gives Daniel a purple robe, a gold to hang on his gold necklace for his rope for his neck, and he's now been promoted to third highest ruler. Isn't that something? So that night Belshazzar was killed. Darius took over. Darius of the Medes took over after that. So get this: while Darius is king, Darius divided the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he placed some leaders, officers over every province. Each one of them had his own province. Daniel and two other guys, he made them supervisors of the ones who were in charge of the provinces. And so the king was so pleased with Daniel, so pleased with him, that he decided he planned to make Daniel over the entire province. So over the other two who was on his same level and over the entire empire. Yeah, they didn't like that. Administrators, officers, a lot of them, they didn't like that. So they looked for ways to mess Daniel up. They wanted to report that Daniel, they tried to find fault with him. They really did. And so, yeah, that was jealousy, and they created a plot. And so they noticed they couldn't find anything on Daniel. He was faithful. He was responsible. I mean, highly responsible. And he was trustworthy, highly trustworthy, completely trustworthy. So they couldn't find anything to pin on him. No way could they do anything to hurt Daniel. One thing they did notice about Daniel was that he was faithful in serving the Lord. So they decided to come up with something religious. And so what they did was, they were like, these administrators, officers, they decided they're going to go to the king, come up with this brainiac idea. Okay, how about we have this thing, Lord, that no one in these kingdoms, in this nation, is allowed to bow down and pray to anyone or anything except you for 30 days. For 30 days, they're not allowed to bow down and pray to anything and anyone. Because they knew Daniel was very faithful, very loyal to God. So they signed a decree and everything. Daniel found out about it later, and as soon as he found out, he went and he prayed. He has his window open. Everybody knows he has his window open. He's facing Jerusalem, and he's praying 3 times a day. So then they go to the king and remind him of the decree they just signed, that anyone caught praying for 30 days, if they're not praying to you, then they need to be thrown into the den of lions, right? And so he's like, yeah, I did say that. He finds out it's Daniel they're talking about. Woo! The king was not happy about that. But there was no loophole. I mean, this man tried all day, couldn't sleep that night. He wanted to find a loophole for Daniel. There was no loophole. You had to stand by your decree. So what they did was they brought him. Oh my God, he was so bothered by this. They threw Daniel in the lion's den, and they sealed it with a big stone. He couldn't get out. This man, this king, fasted all night. He didn't have any entertainment. He was really bothered because he did not know that Daniel was going to be affected. Isn't that something? Isn't that something for someone in that much power, respect you so much that clearly there was a love there as well? Isn't that something? He highly respected Daniel. You got to see it for what it is, right? But I love the fact that God used Daniel in so many ways to prove who God is. I love it. Now get this. The next day, early in the morning, this king runs to go check on Daniel. Daniel, the God that you serve, did he come through and keep you safe? He says, yes, I'm here, basically. And he is so happy, he's overjoyed that Daniel is in a good place. Daniel's good. I read this a few times, and I noticed that Daniel, God allowed that to happen to Daniel for Daniel's purpose as well. Like Daniel needed to be reaffirmed that he was doing good, that he was good and being faithful to God. I love the fact that he did not compromise. Maybe his faith was I don't know. God had proved himself to Daniel too, so this was Daniel's trial as well. Isn't that something? But get this, the king was so upset about them putting him in that position and finding fault with a good man like Daniel. Those men who conspired and plotted against Daniel, he took them and threw them in the lion's den. Them and their wives and their children. Isn't that something? So you know what they say, if you're going to dig a hole for someone, you need to dig one for yourself as well. Yes, yes. So again, I love the book of Daniel. Please read Daniel 4 through 6. It was good. Actually, all of Daniel. Yesterday it was good. Today is good. You see God through this thing. God shows himself. And don't forget, this is during the time where the children of Israel were in exile in Babylon. God had a lot of stuff going on around that time. He had Daniel, he had Ezekiel, he had Jeremiah, all that going on. And then Jerusalem and its trials and all those things with Egypt, all of that, all the different nations, a lot was going on that time. But we're talking about when they were in Babylon. Now they're in Babylon. These are some of the things that are happening in Babylon. So there you guys have it. There you guys have it. Day number 259, Daniel chapter 4 through 6. You have a God-filled blessed day.